Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to uncover the night CEO Alex nearly breaks under work and fatherhood, until Tuna quietly draws him into a warm lavender bath and a simple dinner that changes everything. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. In the dim hallway, the front door creaked open with a tired, dragging groan. Alex stepped inside as if he'd walked all the way home carrying the skyline on his shoulders. His grey suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened and skewed, and the shine that normally lived in his posture had been worn down by hours of pressure. He dropped his briefcase near the wall. It landed with a dull thud that felt like the last beat of a long, losing day. For half a breath, the apartment held still. Then Henry cried from the nursery, sharp, urgent, unignorable. The sound cut through the quiet and found Alex's nerves like a blade finds a seam. He pressed his palms to his temples and exhaled, ragged and slow, like he was trying to push the day out of his lungs. Just one more day, he muttered. Why does one day feel like eternity? He shuffled into the living room and sank onto the sofa. Elbows on knees, head lowered, he covered his face with both hands. The world he controlled for a living, meetings that never ended. Red numbers sliding down graphs, people waiting for answers, collided with the world he could never fully control at home. Bottles, diapers, tiny cries that didn't care about titles. He felt like a machine running on fumes, gears grinding, lights flickering, one spark away from shutting down. From the kitchen doorway, Tuna appeared without sound. She didn't rush. She didn't speak. She simply watched him, letting her eyes take in the shape of him in the lamplight. Shoulders rounded, spine bent, the unbreakable man folded inward as if trying to protect what was left. Something tightened in her chest. Not pity exactly, something sharper, more urgent. She knew the look. She'd seen it in small flashes the past weeks. The way his gaze would go distant after a call, the way his jaw would clench when Henry woke at night. Today, it wasn't a flash. Today, it was the edge. Henry's cries drifted again, softer now, but persistent. Even the baby seemed to sense the heaviness in the air, like the apartment itself had thickened. Tuna's fingers curled into her palms. A quick chain of memories flickered through her. Alex pacing the floor at 3 a.m., humming a broken lullaby with a voice hoarse from fatigue. The brief spark in his eyes when Henry smiled, the way that spark would die the second his phone vibrated. He was fighting two wars at once, and neither side offered mercy. Tuna understood something simple. Words would evaporate. Sympathy would bounce off his armor. Tonight required care that didn't ask permission. She turned and moved toward the bathroom. One clear thought cut through everything. He needed to be allowed to rest, even if only for a moment. She twisted the faucet. Hot water rushed out with a steady murmur, a sound that felt like calm translated into motion. Steam began to rise, softening the hard edges of the room. Tuna added a few drops of lavender oil, watching the scent bloom into the air, invisible but certain. She tested the temperature on her wrist and adjusted it until it was perfect, warm enough to loosen muscles, gentle enough to feel safe. As the tub filled, she laid out a thick towel and draped his favorite robe beside it. She did it with the same careful precision she used when she packed Henry's bag. Simple actions, done deliberately, because details were how you protected what you loved. She paused, picturing the resistance she knew was coming. Alex would say he was fine. Alex would try to push through. That stubborn need to carry everything alone ran deep. But beneath the armor, she also knew there was a man who was tired of being strong. Tuna breathed in once, steadying herself, then returned to the living room. Alex was still in the same position, hands covering his face. His shoulders lifted and fell in uneven rhythm. Tuna stepped close enough for him to feel her presence before she spoke. "Alex," she said softly, "I prepared a bath for you. Come soak for a while. Just a little while." He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were bloodshot, but still sharp, still trying to hold control. He shook his head, weak, almost automatic. "I'm fine," he began. The lie fell apart as soon as it left his mouth. His voice sounded scraped and thin, like it didn't have the strength to pretend anymore. Tuna didn't argue. She didn't lecture. She reached down and took his hand. His palm was cold, his fingers trembling as if the stress had nowhere else to go. She held him the way you hold someone standing too close to a ledge. "Please," she said, quieter now. "Let your body breathe." For a second, Alex's gaze dropped to their joined hands. Something in his expression shifted, tiny, private, but real. The fortress he'd built all day cracked, not with collapse, but with permission. He let her pull him to his feet. He stood slowly, like gravity had increased. Tuna stayed close and guided him down the hallway. Each step looked heavy, as if he were walking through his own emotions and afraid of what he'd find if he stopped resisting. In the bathroom, warm steam rose and wrapped around his face. The lavender scent met him gently, like a hand on the back of his neck. The tub water glowed under the soft sconce light, and for a moment Alex just stared at it, as if he'd forgotten that comfort could exist. He sat on the edge of the tub, his fingers fumbled at buttons, releasing them one by one, each click like a small burden dropping to the floor. When he lowered himself into the water, the heat closed around him, and something in his body finally unclenched. Alex leaned back, eyes closing. Work images tried to surge boardrooms, harsh voices, blinking screens, but the warmth softened them. The steam blurred them. For the first time all day, he wasn't required to answer. No calls, no decisions, no mask. Somewhere beyond the bathroom door, Henry's cry rose again, faint through the walls. This time it didn't slice him open. It sounded like a reminder, you're not alone, and you don't have to fight every second by yourself. A tear slid down Alex's cheek, quiet and unexpected. Not despair, relief, gratitude. He didn't speak it out loud, but in his mind the words formed clearly. Thank you. He stayed in the water, letting the heat seep into muscle and bone, letting his heartbeat slow down to something human again. And outside the bathroom, Tuna stood for a moment in the hallway, listening to the change in his breathing, knowing this was only the first thread. Tonight, she would keep pulling him back from the brink, gently, patiently, until he remembered what it felt like to be held. She moved back to the kitchen and kept the lights low. The apartment still carried the metallic scent of stress, so she changed it on purpose. She rinsed a cutting board, sliced lemon into thin moons, and let the bright citrus wake the air. From the fridge, she pulled chicken she'd marinated earlier, honey, garlic, rosemary, a pinch of smoked paprika, nothing extravagant, just care turned into flavor. While the oven preheated, she set 2 plates on the table and a small glass of water beside them, like an invitation that didn't demand conversation. In the nursery, Henry fussed once, then quieted, as if the calm was spreading room to room. Tuna listened for Alex's breathing behind the bathroom door. Slower now, deeper. She didn't need him to be strong tonight. She needed him to come back to himself. Alex stayed in the tub longer than he planned. Not because he was avoiding the world, but because the warmth felt like the first time all day he could breathe without bracing. When he finally opened his eyes, the steam had softened the room into a blur. The lavender scent hovered like a quiet promise that nothing needed to be solved right now. He rose slowly, water sliding off his skin in thin streams. His arms felt heavy, but not the same crushing heaviness from before, more like the weight you feel after carrying something too long and finally setting it down. He wrapped the robe around himself, the fabric soft and familiar, and stood for a moment with both hands on the sink, staring at his own reflection. He looked human again. Tired, yes, but not broken. From the hall, Henry's voice drifted, no longer a sharp scream, more like restless fussing. Alex's chest tightened instinctively, but the panic didn't surge this time. The bath hadn't erased responsibility. It had just steadied him enough to face it. He stepped out. The apartment had changed while he was gone. The lighting was lower, warmer. The air smelled different citrus and herbs, a deep sweetness underneath. It didn't smell like stress anymore. It smelled like home. Tuna was in the kitchen, moving quietly. She didn't glance up right away. She was focused on small things, arranging plates, setting a glass down, wiping the counter with slow, deliberate strokes. The kind of careful attention that said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving you alone in this." Alex paused at the doorway, watching her. Candlelight flickered near the table, throwing soft shadows across her face. She looked calm, but he could see the tension she carried too, the kind that never fully leaves a mother. Still, she was building peace with her hands. Tuna finally turned and met his eyes. For a beat, neither spoke. Their silence wasn't empty. It was full of what the day had taken and what the night was trying to give back. "Feeling better?" Tuna asked, voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded. His throat tightened. "Yeah," he said, then added, quieter, "Thank you." Tuna didn't respond with a speech. She just stepped closer, placed her palm flat against his chest, and felt his heartbeat. It was steadier now, human, present. Alex caught her hand and held it there, as if he needed proof he was really back. Then he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her. The hug wasn't quick. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of hug you give when you've been holding yourself together all day and finally let someone else hold a piece of you. Tuna relaxed into him. Her hair carried a faint trace of lemon and spice. Alex inhaled it and felt something in his chest unclench. From the nursery, Henry made a soft coo, like a tiny sound of approval. The timing made Tuna's lips curve into a small smile. Alex kissed her forehead, lingering a second. His voice cracked as he spoke. "You did all this for me?" Tuna nodded, eyes shimmering. "Because you deserve to be loved, Alex," she said. "Not every battle has to be fought alone." That sentence hit him harder than any boardroom pressure, because it wasn't advice, it was permission. Permission to stop pretending he could carry everything without help. Henry fussed again, louder now. The sound pulled at Alex's instincts, but Tuna touched his arm gently. "I'll get him," she said, but Alex shook his head. "No," he replied, surprising even himself. "Let me." He walked to the nursery with measured steps, not rushing. Henry was awake, face scrunched, arms moving in small jerks. The moment Alex leaned over the crib, Henry's cries softened, like the baby recognized him even through exhaustion. Alex lifted him carefully, cradling him close. Henry's tiny hand found the edge of the robe and gripped it with surprising strength. Alex looked down and felt something warm, almost painful, spread through him, a reminder of why he was fighting so hard in the first place. Back in the kitchen, the roasted chicken rested at the center of the table, skin crisp and golden under the warm light. The scent wrapped around them like a blanket. Tuna pulled out a chair for Alex, then sat beside him rather than across from him, as if closeness mattered more than manners tonight. Alex sat with Henry in his arms. The baby's eyes were wide and curious, moving between their faces, as if studying this new calm version of the world. Tuna served Alex first small slices, carefully placed. Then she served herself. Simple, warm, honest food. The kind that doesn't demand applause, only gratitude. Alex took a bite. Honey and rosemary, garlic and warmth. The flavor wasn't just taste, it was a reminder that life still held simple joys, even after brutal days. "This is really good," Alex said, voice low and sincere. Tuna watched him closely, searching his face like she was looking for a sign. When she saw the tension ease around his mouth, she let herself breathe. They ate slowly, not rushing, not filling the air with forced conversation. At first, there were only small sounds. The clink of fork against plate, the soft crackle of candle flame, Henry's occasional coo. Then, little words began to appear, the way they do when people feel safe again. Tuna told him about her day in short pieces. Alex answered with honest fragments of his. A meeting that dragged on too long. numbers that wouldn't behave, the constant feeling of being chased by expectations. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't hide it either. Henry reached a tiny hand toward the plate, fascinated. Tuna laughed softly and touched his fingers. Alex chuckled too, a quiet sound that felt rare. For a moment, it felt like the world outside their apartment didn't exist. Then Alex set his fork down and looked at Tuna. His eyes held exhaustion, yes, but also something else, gratitude, that had nowhere else to go. "Thank you," he said again, more firmly this time, "for everything." Tuna laced her fingers through his under the table. Her hand was warm, steady. "We're family," she whispered. "When you're tired, we rest together." Alex swallowed hard. The words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like a new rule of life, one he should have learned earlier. The candles burned lower. The oven cooled. The apartment grew quiet, not from emptiness, but from peace. Henry yawned, rubbed his eyes, and settled against Alex's chest, drifting towards sleep. Alex held him carefully, rocking with a slow rhythm that felt natural now. Tuna leaned her head on Alex's shoulder. The contact was light, but it carried everything: forgiveness, hope, and the quiet decision to keep choosing each other even when the world demanded otherwise. Outside, city lights continued to flicker. Work would return tomorrow. Pressure would still exist. But tonight, in this small room, they had built something stronger than exhaustion. Not with grand speeches, with lavender steam, with roasted chicken, with a baby's soft coo, with hands that reached out instead of shutting down. And as the night settled around them, Alex finally understood something he'd been too busy to admit. Being strong wasn't carrying everything alone. Being strong was letting love hold you when you were too tired to stand. Exhausted after a brutal day, CEO Alex comes home drained, suit rumpled, and spirit near collapse. Henry's cries pierce the apartment, and Alex sinks onto the sofa, overwhelmed by pressure from both work and fatherhood. Tuna recognizes he's at his limit and chooses quiet, deliberate care instead of words. She prepares a warm bath with lavender oil, gently insisting Alex rest and let his guard down. In the steam and silence, his tension finally releases, and he feels relief rather than shame. While he soaks, Tuna changes the atmosphere by cooking a simple roasted chicken dinner and setting the table with tenderness. Alex returns calmer, embraces Tuna, and chooses to soothe Henry himself. They share an unhurried meal, soft laughter, and honest gratitude. Tuna reminds him they are family and should rest together, turning the night into a small sanctuary.